Hi, we're 2 weeks into the college football season for USC and UCLA, and so far we've learned two things. USC, their offense is must-see TV, and UCLA is acting like they don't give a damn if you even bother to look at them at all. Good evening. I'm James with Faithful Angelino Sports, and this is your Week 2 Roundup for USC and UCLA football. If you like the content that we put out about the Trojans and Bruins, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, the first thing you should know is the final scores. UCLA improves to 2-0 with a 45-7 victory over Alabama State. Not that Alabama, Alabama State. Meanwhile, USC, they went up to Palo Alto. And it was a lovely little affair where they burst out to a 41-14 lead. They wound up winning 41-28. And I've been deciding which one to talk about first. And I think the way I want to go is to break out the Trojans offense. You see, when Lincoln Riley came in and they started adding players in the transfer portal, they added Jordan Addison. And the moment they did, if you look on the USC playlist, I described the offense as invincible. And I don't see any reason to backtrack from that word at all. I think after 2 weeks, yes, you're sitting there going, well, they played Rice. What can they do against a real team like Stanford? Didn't matter. The offense was damn near unstoppable. The first quote-unquote stop for the Cardinal against the Trojans offense was a missed field goal attempt with 3:45 left to go in the third quarter. The Cardinal had no answers whatsoever for the USC offense. And if you are part of the hype train for USC football, just know this: that hype train is about to hit ludicrous speed very, very quickly. Now, the cliche about what a difference a year makes absolute sense when talking about the Trojans. If you think about it, last year, Stanford, the game that the Trojans played, they lost in a similar fashion last year. That was Clay Helton's final game. The Trojans were basically adrift at sea for the rest of the year. Now, you could literally argue that the Trojans are anywhere from ranked maybe number 5 to number 8 in the country. Look at how the remaining schedule looks for USC while you're at it. What are the rivalries for USC? Notre Dame? Notre Dame is 0-2. That is it. They were a top 10 team even going into today. That's not going to happen now. Notre Dame is extremely beatable. Meanwhile, you could say, well, what about Utah? Well, of course, the Utes lost to Florida last week. The Trojans could launch a major run. It's not a fait accompli that USC is going to go to the college football playoffs. But if you are thinking about it somewhere in your mind, I'm not going to blame you. I can't. I dare you to dream big after the first couple of games of the Riley era. Caleb Williams passed for 347 yards and 4 touchdowns and 20 of 27 accuracy. Unlike last week against Rice, the Trojans even established the run. Travis Dye rushed for over 100 yards and scored a touchdown. Jordan Addison is like a fire alarm with legs. He is such a deep threat. You can't miss him. He scored a touchdown, one of the most physically dominating touchdown bombs I've seen in college football in years. The Trojans' offense under Lincoln Riley hums like music. It's a symphony of speed. But I still can't get the identity of the defense down. And that could be USC's Achilles heel. If you saw the game, you're sitting there going, okay, great. The Trojans hustle on defense. Yeah, they forced turnovers. That's exciting. There were 2 picks in tonight's game. One by Mekhi Blackman and the other by Max Williams. But you can't rely on turnovers week after week. That's too much of an ask. It's not sustainable. Meanwhile, Stanford did rush for 221 yards. 150 yards as a team rushing is a standard for a winning team. Rice rushed for 160, lost. Stanford rushed for 220. That's a problem that USC has to solve. Meanwhile, also Stanford passed for 220 more. How will this defense force punts on a consistent basis? We don't know. So know this, there is now a path to the college football playoff for USC, but the defense is so vulnerable that the Trojans could wind up being a paper tiger. We don't know yet. Hell, thus far, even UCLA plays defense. Now, as for UCLA, look, I'm starting to think that the Bruins, that the football program just doesn't want to be taken seriously, or they don't want to be noticed. It's like a rope-a-dope strategy, or it's like when Joe Biden was running against Donald Trump from the basement and made very few public appearances. He just let Trump go out and run his mouth all day, and eventually Biden looked like the sane one, right? And I think in a sense, you could almost say that the Bruins are going out of their way to be bland. And I would also add that the Bruins fans have responded in kind so far. There are articles again today about how few people showed up to see UCLA play a team from a historically black college. It's very strange. If you think about everything UCLA has done from the offseason, it's like the games are so bland that they'll only be on the Pac-12 network, where the ratings are worse than the USFL. The tickets for Bruins games are cheaper than a quarter pounder with cheese at McDonald's. They'll play teams you've never heard of. You don't see scouts from UCLA at your local high school football games. They don't recruit from high schools anymore. While they're at it, I can't even tell you for sure that the Bruins like their fans. Where's the proof? But the one thing UCLA does so far, and last year, is win football games. It's a crazy, madcap, inexplicable method, but they win. Now, when you take a look at the game against Alabama State, it got even weirder for UCLA. Star running back Zach Charbonnet didn't even play. Starting quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they pulled him in the second quarter. And they said he had a turned ankle, but I'm not necessarily sure I buy into that injury as something that was really severe. I'm sitting there thinking that they're looking at Alabama State going, why should we risk our actual lead quarterback out there? For who? For what? And so they pulled him. I don't want to sound disrespectful to Ethan Garbers, the reserve quarterback, but he had to know nobody cared. He had to basically just go out there and have fun just for himself because he knew nobody was watching. And of course, how is that going to continue for UCLA? Glad you asked. Next week, the Bruins continue their tour of Alabama schools that don't matter. Schools that are so small and ridiculous where it's like inbreeding is a major over there for their science department. Where the marching band blows on a jug. That's how ridiculous these schools are that UCLA is playing. But they're going to keep racking up wins. Meanwhile, USC will come back to the Coliseum next week, and they'll play Fresno State. So, again, both schools with positives to look at, and both schools with something that makes you scratch your head. Now, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelinos. We talk USC and UCLA football here. Thanks for watching. I'm James. I'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelinos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.